The kindness you present as a virtue is interpreted by others as weakness. In the silent game of power, the man who tries to be loved is always the first to lose. Kindness has always been sold as a safe path, an act that supposedly opens doors, earns respect, and shields you from conflict. But in reality, it works as a discreet invitation to be exploited. When a man offers kindness without strength behind it, he doesn't inspire trust. He signals vulnerability, and those who notice it know exactly how to use that opening. Modern kindness is not perceived as virtue, but as exposure. Every limitless, gentle act dissolves a piece of your authority, and every silent concession prepares your social disappearance. The kind man, in trying to avoid rejection, becomes the first to be discarded. What you once called character has always been your weakest defense, and now you need to understand the mechanism that destroys anyone who tries to be too good in a world that respects only what is necessary. Most men believe they are kind by principle, but the truth is far less noble. The kindness they display doesn't come from inner strength, but from fear of confronting the world. They call it virtue because they can't admit it is, at its core, a desperate attempt to avoid rejection. Anyone who observes this dynamic quickly notices what lies beneath. There is no courage, only a silent need to be approved. And that need is visible. It creates cracks. It exposes weaknesses before a single word is spoken. In social settings, this reading is instantaneous, and people instinctively understand how far they can push a man who appears too good. Emotional dependence is the root of this performed kindness. It makes a man offer more than he can sustain, smile more than he feels, and concede more than he should, all of it to make sure no one pulls away. But in doing so, he gives up power long before realizing it's gone. A man who confuses kindness with virtue becomes exactly what Machiavelli would despise: someone ruled by the desire to please, not by the ability to lead. When approval becomes fuel, any refusal turns into a threat, and the man begins to build his identity on the unstable ground of others' opinions. This eagerness to please works like an open source of emotional energy. People with sharper social instincts detect it and draw near, not out of respect, but out of convenience. The presence of the kind man attracts subtle predators, those who sense they won't face resistance. The logic is simple. Where there is need, there is a breach. Where there is a breach, there is control. And while the kind man tries to protect his image, others have already learned how to exploit his softness. In the end, kindness doesn't reveal character. It reveals escape. It's the disguise a man wears when he fears the truth about himself. The one who avoids conflict under the banner of kindness is simply announcing he is not ready to be tested. And in the social arena, a man who isn't ready to be tested is ready to be used. Automatic kindness is not read as virtue. It is interpreted as submission. When you respond yes to everything just to avoid discomfort, you are not showing kindness. You are signaling that you fear any form of tension. And in the social game, tension is the natural language of hierarchy. Each involuntary concession reveals that your priority is not authority, but the preservation of harmony. This behavior sends others a silent and precise message: you offer no resistance. And once they see that, the testing begins. It always begins. People test the kind man because he has already shown he doesn't know how to say no. They watch how he bends to maintain approval, how he tries to soften environments that don't require softness, and how he becomes predictable by avoiding any friction. Predictability here is not safety, it is vulnerability. A predictable man is easy to manipulate, easy to bypass, easy to use. His mask of kindness, crafted to appear virtuous, functions like thin glass. A single firm demand is enough to crack it and expose insecurity behind the smile. And when the glass breaks, respect dissolves with it. This fragility never goes unnoticed. In professional settings, excessive docility earns disproportionate demands. In relationships, those who avoid conflict become emotionally disposable. In social circles, the man who tries to please everyone becomes invisible. Kindness without posture creates a pattern. You give more than you receive, yet you are treated as if you offer little. This happens because your kindness is never perceived as strength. It is perceived as permission, a continuous permission to be overstepped. In the end, the kind man is not admired. He is useful, a replaceable piece on the board. People do not value him. They simply use him as long as the mask remains intact. And when he finally realizes he has been reduced to an emotional resource, it is already too late. What he called character was always interpreted as Submission. Kindness without strategy turns any man into a target, and targets do not command, they are commanded. The cycle begins almost imperceptibly. The kind man believes that by giving more, he will receive proportional recognition, but reality works in reverse. The more he gives, the less value he receives. The repetition of this pattern creates an internal distortion. He starts doing even more, hoping to regain what he has lost. Respect, attention, position. This is how the addiction to approval is born. A constant search for validation that never arrives in the expected measure. Every act of kindness becomes emotional currency that others learn to take without offering anything in return. This imbalance is not an accident. It's a natural consequence of social logic. When someone offers emotional abundance without demanding reciprocity, they make it clear that their worth depends on someone else's response. And any relationship where value depends on external reaction inevitably becomes psychological submission. The kind man grows accustomed to measuring his relevance by what others give back. When that return decreases, he does not confront it. He intensifies his efforts. When he is not recognized, he bends even further. This dynamic strips him of what Machiavelli would consider essential, the ability to remain centered regardless of circumstances. At this point, kindness is no longer a choice. It becomes compulsion. He is not kind because he wants to be. He is kind because he must. The need to avoid conflict and secure acceptance turns into an automatic mechanism of emotional survival. And like any automatic mechanism, it is predictable, easy to manipulate, and profoundly destructive. Those who notice his dependency understand that withdrawing small signs of approval is enough to control his actions. The kind man then acts not out of conviction, but out of fear of losing the little he believes he has. The Machiavellian logic is simple. A man who gives too much loses authority. When kindness becomes an internal obligation, you become emotionally captive to another person's response. This silent dependency corrodes self-confidence down to the core. In the end, the kind man doesn't just give too much, he gives himself. And any man who offers himself too freely stops being seen as a person. He becomes a resource. At this stage, kindness is no longer a virtue. It is institutionalized weakness. At some point, the agreeable man wakes up to an uncomfortable truth. His generosity was never seen as virtue. It was interpreted as obligation. He realizes that no matter how much he gives, the return doesn't grow. In fact, people's expectations rise while his autonomy shrinks. This internal shock doesn't strengthen him, it erodes him. And from that erosion emerges the most dangerous version of him, the resentful good man. He keeps giving, but he no longer believes in the gesture. He offers help with a tight jaw, responds to requests with weighted silence, and fulfills expectations while drowning in frustration. Kindness, once voluntary, becomes a burden he carries just to preserve the image that keeps him socially acceptable. This man doesn't explode, he decays. He carries a buildup of concessions that should never have been made, and each one becomes a small wound of indignation. His kindness is now a devalued currency, a mechanical behavior that produces no respect, only exhaustion. Worse still, he has no idea how to break the cycle. If he says no, he fears losing the little approval he still receives. If he keeps saying yes, his self-esteem slowly disintegrates. This dilemma fractures his identity. On the outside, he appears reliable. On the inside, he's drained. The utilitarian nature of kindness shows its cruelest face here. People around him don't see the effort he believes he's offering. They see only availability. And constant availability is never treated as value. It's treated as a resource. The resentful good man, sensing this, tries to regain control by giving even more, convinced that one extra gesture will finally be acknowledged. But in practice, this only deepens his irrelevance. The man who gives too much becomes predictable. The man who gives without limit becomes invisible, and the invisible wield no power. In the end, resentment doesn't emerge because he was too good. It emerges because he was good without strategy, without boundaries, and without the internal strength to sustain his generosity. The kindness that was supposed to elevate him turns him into a shadow, and a shadow does not lead. It only follows. The break begins in silence. It isn't a grand moment or a sudden epiphany. It's the cold realization that every act of kindness offered until now carried fear, not strength. The man sees that his choices were never true choices. They were disguised attempts to avoid rejection. This revelation, uncomfortable as it is, marks the exact point where transformation begins. Because when he finally faces that mirror, he is forced to admit what he avoided for years. His gentleness was a fragile armor, built to survive a world that demands presence, not likability. The question then shifts. It is no longer, why don't they like me? But why did I give so much just to be tolerated? At this point, questions emerge that cannot be ignored. Are you kind out of strength or fear? The answer isn't in the words you repeat, but in how you react when challenged. A man driven by strength remains centered. A man driven by fear collapses under minor tension. Are your choices truly yours? Or were they shaped by the fear of being rejected? Look at your concessions. How many were made because you genuinely wanted to, and how many were made to avoid the discomfort of saying no? This distinction draws the line between the man who leads and the man who adjusts himself to survive. Real transformation doesn't happen when a man changes his behavior, but when he changes the meaning he assigns to his behavior. He understands that saying yes all the time was never kindness. It was self-preservation disguised as virtue. He sees that in trying to be loved, he became predictable. In avoiding conflict, he became disposable. And in clinging to kindness as identity, he became a prisoner of his own image. When this awareness settles in, something old dies. Emotional dependence, the need for approval, the impulse to please. And when that part dies, a new internal axis is formed. Self-mastery. The man stops seeking love and begins seeking clarity. He stops acting to be accepted and begins acting to remain sovereign. Kindness ceases to be an automatic reflex. It becomes a deliberate choice, and therefore powerful. Transformation occurs when he finally understands that strength is not in being cold, but in choosing precisely when to be cold and when to be generous. Machiavelli never despised kindness. He despised naivety. To him, kindness should never be a permanent trait but a tool, something to be used when it strengthens your position and withheld when it threatens your authority. The modern man's mistake is turning kindness into a fixed identity, as if being good made him immune to the social game. This rigidity weakens him. In the real world, a man who is always kind isn't seen as virtuous. He's seen as predictable. And predictability, in any landscape of power, is vulnerability. The principle is simple. Kindness only has value when it can be withdrawn. Once it becomes an obligation, it loses its effect. Selective kindness emerges from this understanding. It isn't coldness for the sake of coldness, but strategic precision. A man who grasps this logic knows that kindness should be applied only when it creates advantage. He reads the environment, measures intentions, calculates impact. He offers kindness when he wants to attract allies, stabilize tension, or prepare ground for negotiation. And he withdraws it the moment he senses someone using his softness as an entry point. In this shift, kindness stops being an emotional reflex and becomes a tool of command. It is managed like a scarce resource, used with clear purpose, never scattered as currency for approval. Strategic kindness demands something few men possess: internal control. Only those who do not need to be loved can choose when to be gentle. Only those unafraid of rejection can calculate their concessions. This man doesn't smile out of instinct. He smiles by decision. He doesn't help to please, he helps to direct. His presence is not charming, it is deliberate. And this restraint is exactly what inspires respect. Kindness from a man capable of saying no carries weight. Kindness from someone incapable of refusing is dismissed as a sign of weakness. In the hands of the strong, kindness is a sharpened blade. It cuts when necessary, protects when useful, and stays sheathed when it jeopardizes power. In the hands of the weak, it becomes a slave's collar, an attractive ornament that exposes the absence of autonomy. The evolution of a man begins when he stops seeking approval and starts seeking structure. The first stage of this path is the reactive good man. He acts to please, because he believes that harmony purchased through concessions will protect him. He avoids conflict as if it were an existential threat, and measures every gesture by its emotional impact on others. His identity functions like a mirror. It reflects the expectations around him but never reveals his own depth. He lives inside the territory of fear of disappointing, fear of appearing harsh, fear of being abandoned. At this stage, every act of kindness is born from insecurity, not intention. The transition begins when he realizes that pleasing others doesn't prevent disrespect, it invites it. This is where the neutral man emerges. Here, The man rebuilds his posture. He learns to set boundaries calmly, without raising his voice, and without justifying his refusals. He controls his emotions the way someone holds the reins of a wild animal, firm, silent, present. He discovers that he doesn't need to be accepted in order to be respected. By eliminating the need to please, he breaks the internal mechanism that kept him chained to approval. The neutral man doesn't seek conflict, but he doesn't fear it either. His presence stops being shaped by others and becomes defined by his own consciousness. With time, the third stage appears, the cold and untouchable man. He does not react emotionally because he understands that reacting is a form of surrender. He observes before responding, calculates before moving, and offers kindness only when there is strategic purpose. His coldness is not harshness, it is control. He creates distance without hostility, establishes authority without imposition, and inspires respect without asking for it. People around him sense that they cannot manipulate him because he needs nothing from them. His presence is enough. Here, kindness becomes a tool of power rather than an emotional prison. He doesn't offer it because he wants to be loved. He offers it because he chooses to. And that choice, supported by self-mastery, creates a silent form of respect the ordinary man never experiences. The untouchable man does not fear losing anyone because he does not lose himself. This is the point where power begins. Most men believe that kindness will protect them from chaos, as if softness were a shield. But in practice, kindness without strength becomes a silent invitation to be overrun. It strips away authority, weakens presence, and erodes the small amount of respect that remains. When a man insists on being kind without inner support, he loses social territory inch by inch, not because others are cruel, but because human dynamics are simple. Anything that sets no boundaries is never taken seriously. The kind man thinks his intentions will be noticed. The world sees only his lack of posture. The price starts small. Tasks that were never yours are pushed onto you. People who once asked now demand. Relationships that should be balanced turn into one-sided drains. And while this happens, the kind man convinces himself that being easy to handle is a virtue. He fails to notice he is actually giving away pieces of himself in exchange for crumbs of acceptance. This is how authority disappears, not through major conflicts, but through repeated small concessions. The fall is silent, gradual, almost invisible. You only notice it when there is nothing left to give, but the final collapse is inevitable. Eventually, people stop thanking you for your kindness and begin expecting it as an obligation. What was once voluntary becomes a unilateral duty, and when you fail to deliver, you are treated as insufficient, ungrateful, selfish. This is the tragic paradox. The more kindness you offer without strength, the more harshly you will be judged. No one admires the kind man. They admire the necessary one. And a man who lacks the strength to protect himself is not seen as necessary. He is seen as expendable. The critical point is simple. Kindness destroys no one. What destroys you is offering it without the power to sustain it. A man who tries to be good to avoid conflict ends up creating an internal hell no one sees. A man who tries to be loved becomes invisible, and the invisible do not lead, do not influence, do not endure. The price of fragile kindness is losing yourself long before others forget you. The journey ends where most men never dare to go, at the boundary between who you have been and who you decide to become. The kindness you once used as a shield has proven insufficient to sustain your presence in the world. It served others far more than it ever served you, and facing this truth reveals the real test. Understanding that kindness only has value when it comes from strength, never from fear. A man who can choose when to be cold and when to be gentle does not bow to approval. He reshapes it. He understands that power does not come from rejecting kindness, but from controlling it with precision. This is the moment where everything is decided. When you look at your recent history and recognize how many concessions were made simply to avoid discomfort. When you realize your silence was often not strategy, but submission. When you understand that in trying to be loved by everyone, you became irrelevant to yourself. The question is no longer whether you should abandon kindness, but whether you have the courage to use it only when it strengthens your position. Most men continue offering what they cannot afford, and they pay for it with their identity. Now the final test emerges. Are you kind out of strength or out of fear? Is your kindness a form of power or a disguise? Who would you become if you stopped trying to please? These questions do not demand instant answers. They demand maturity. A man who understands their weight begins to detach from his old patterns. He no longer offers himself to be accepted. He acts to establish territory. He does not justify himself. He positions himself. He does not fear disappointing others. He fears only losing his inner sovereignty. If you understand this, make it clear to yourself before you say it to anyone else. I choose my kindness. And when you are ready for the next move, continue the journey. The next video is not a sequence. It is the continuation of your transformation. From this point on, you do not act to be seen. You act to become inevitable.